Good evening. We will now call to order the Chesterfield Township Planning Commission meeting on April 18th. I will call the roll. Paul Miller is here. Rick LaBelle.
Here.
Scott Demink.
Here.
Mr. Leonard is excused. Mr. Renault is excused. Mr. Jaworski.
Here.
Mr. Klanowski. Mr. Carr.
Here.
Mr. Brokart.
Here.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Approval of the minutes of prior meetings. I will make a motion to approve the minutes of April 4th.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Miller, supported by Mr. Demink. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Approval of the agenda. I will make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Miller, supported by Mr. LaBelle. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Public hearings tonight, we have 3 of them. The first one has been withdrawn, rezoning number 366, requesting to rezone property located on the west side of Gratiot. So that one has been rezoned. Item B, rezoning number 365, requesting to rezone the property located on the northeast of intersection of 25 Mile Road and Bates Road from M1 Light Manufacturing to M2 General Manufacturing, parcel ID number 150904300008, 150905276001, 150905400002, and 150905400007. I will make a motion to open the public hearing.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Miller, supported by Mr. Demink. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, I ask that the commission give me, take me off this agenda item. I have a financial interest on the property to the west.
Okay. Thank you.
And we need a vote on that.
Okay. We need a vote?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion to excuse Mr. Klanowski from this public hearing.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Miller, supported by Mr. LaBelle. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Ms. Osborne? Want to give a brief?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Commissioners, in front of you, or in your packet, you should have my review letter for rezoning number 365. I'll also note that at your seat, we have a letter that was emailed today from the applicant that details the use, the proposed use for this site. So tonight or at some point in the future, the Planning Commission is tasked with making a recommendation to the Township Board as to whether or not to approve the rezoning from M1 to M2 as requested by the applicant. The site is, or the request is for 4 parcels, as Mr. Chair noted, and the applicant is seeking to rezone all 4 parcels to M2. The parcel, the property map on the bottom of the review letter, page 2, shows the master plan designation for this area. The master plan designates this area as light industrial, and again, as we've talked about previously, the master plan is a guide, and the master plan map is not parcel specific in its designations, but it does designate this area as light industrial. Surrounding properties, we have M1 to the north. That's a vacant lot. We have M1 to the east along the northern part of the property, which is also vacant. Further down along the east is M1, and the uses in that area include things like a window repair place, plastic fabrication, tooling solutions, a manufacturer, and a fitness studio. To the south is a vacant lot that is also M1, and to the west is A1 agricultural residential. So we have our items for consideration for the zoning map amendment. The first is whether or not The site is aligned, or the proposed zoning is in line with the master plan. And as I mentioned, the master plan designates this as light industrial, and the request is for M2, which is general or heavy industrial. So the current zoning is supported. The second consideration is about public services, and the site currently sits on 25 Mile and Bates, where both roads are unimproved and there's no water or sewer services. There is a stream that runs through the site. You can see it on the map on page 3. Runs north to south there, and there are some hydric soils. Criteria 4, or consideration 4, the applicant has not provided evidence that the site can not be developed or used as zoned. The fourth criteria talks about compatibility with surrounding uses. The proposed zoning district is compatible with many of the surrounding uses. Directly north, the parcel is zoned M1 and it's vacant, as discussed previously. To the east, on the north, again along the north, there's light manufacturing. It's vacant, but further down to the south, there's light manufacturing uses. To the south, it's currently vacant, and to the west, there's much less intensive use of agricultural residential. The fifth consideration is about placing a burden on nearby thoroughfares. Both Bates Road and 25 Mile Road are classified as arterial roads in the master plan, and they're both currently classified as local collectors. So there could be an increase in traffic and burden on these surrounding roads, and the master plan has already called out that there may be that. The sixth consideration is about other land currently available for this use. We know that there are parcels of M2 throughout the township, specifically west of Gratiot Road. However, many of these are developed already and are smaller than the individual parcels that are being requested for this rezoning. Consideration 7 asks about if the site will be able to meet the zoning district requirements, and we don't have a site plan, but a concept plan that shows the proposed development was also not provided. But based on the size of the lots, it's likely that the dimensional standards would be able to be met. The eighth consideration is about whether or not rezoning is the best way to address this use. The applicant has, again, provided a letter today dated April 18th, noting that the proposed use for this site is a global auto auction company, Insurance Auto Auction. I'll remind the commissioners that the proposed use is somewhat irrelevant in the rezoning. We really should be focused on whether or not all uses permitted and as special land uses in M2 would be a good fit for this site, because the applicant at this point is not held to that use. Consideration 9 just notes that there hasn't been any changes to the subject property since the master plan was adopted. And finally, consideration 10, is for the planning commissioner's consideration about whether or not this may be considered a spot zoning if it were to be rezoned. And I will turn it over to the commission for a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant like to speak? State your name for the record. And
Thanks. Thank you and good evening. My name's Larry Scott. I'm an attorney at O'Reilly Rancilio, 12900 Hall Road, Suite 350 in Sterling Heights. I'm here tonight on behalf of Messrs. Lewicki, father and son, who sit here with me, and the companies that they own, including a company by the name of Althea Holdings. Mr. Althea Holdings, rather, is in the process, it owns two 40-acre parcels, and it's in the process of purchasing 5 adjoining parcels northeast intersection of 25 Mile and Bates. Like I said, we own 2. We're in the process of purchasing three others, a 10-acre parcel, a nearly 41-acre parcel, and one 22-plus acre wooded wetland parcel that is not proposed for the rezoning. The 4 parcels that are the subject of the rezoning total approximately 131 acres. All of the parcels are currently zoned M1 industrial under the Chesterfield zoning ordinance. This rezoning, proposed rezoning, seeks to rezone these 4 parcels from M1 to M2 general manufacturing under the Chesterfield zoning ordinance. There was meetings here with the township, and the rezoning to M2 was initiated pursuant to discussions with township officials, given what the proposed use was. This makes sense, given that other similar facilities in Michigan are in a more intense zoning district in the communities that they're located. This proposed use, and I appreciate you don't tie it to the zoning, but this proposed user has 3 other locations in Michigan. They are a national company. They're operating in 48 states. They operate in Canada. They operate in the UK. They would like to operate a state-of-the-art vehicle auction business here in the township. They're recognized as an industry leader in operating environmentally conscious, technologically advanced digital auction facilities in the United States and abroad. As I said earlier, they have 3 auction facilities in Michigan: Sumter Township, Byron Center near Grand Rapids, and Flint Township near Flint. The Michigan community with the most similar zoning ordinance where IAA operates is Sumter Township. We've reviewed the zoning classifications for those locations, and Sumter Township locates the use in its most intense of the 2 industrial zoning districts, similar to what Chesterfield has suggested. IAA acquires vehicles from insurers, dealerships, fleet lease, rental car companies, charitable organizations, governmental agencies. Typically, the vehicles are on site for a rather short period of time. Buyers of these vehicles have access to multiple digital bidding and buying channels, innovative vehicle merchandising, and efficient evaluation services to provide seamless purchasing. This minimizes traffic to the site, as most needed information can be gained electronically via the internet. IA's state-of-the-art digital auction operations reduce administrative costs, shorten selling cycle while delivering the highest economic return. This type of use needs a large tract of industrial zone property to develop and operate and have room for future expansion, as it thrives on having a quantity of vehicles. Initially, it intends to construct an attractive industrial building to house its offices, which will front on 25 Mile Road, from which it will operate its administrative functions, internet vehicle transactions, vehicle delivery, and transport. Particular use will not need municipal utilities. Well and septic are adequate. All but the northernmost 30 acres would be developed to house its inventory of vehicles awaiting sale or disposition. Typically, the vehicles are stored in rows, enabling the vehicles to be removed for transport. There will be no stacking of vehicles. This is where the IAA typical vehicle storage is different than some. The northernmost 30 acres are intended to remain vacant for possible future expansion. All access to the auction facility will be from 25 Mile Road, which is intended to be paved from where the paving currently ends near the railroad tracks west of Bates Road. The western side of the site, adjoining Bates Road, would be developed with a large site-obscuring landscaped berm. The office hours of operation are typically 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, shorter yard hours and limited Saturday morning hours. In-person auctions are only held once a week. People have 15 days to remove the car. Chesterfield Township zoning ordinance does not specifically list auto auction houses in its zoning ordinance. Most of the characteristics in this use are of an industrial nature because of the size of the property it requires. Since the auto auction house is not specifically identified and the nature of the use is clearly industrial, we believed that the M2 General Manufacturing District zoning ordinance was the appropriate zoning. This was consistent with how other communities have dealt with IAA in their communities. The M2 General Manufacturing District typically accommodates industrial uses that require a large amount of land as compared to the M1. The M2 district permits all land uses allowed in the M1, light industrial uses, industrial research, and any lawful use of not specifically prohibited if approved as a special land use. The intended use is relatively innocuous use for a heavy industrial district. It's a rather clean operation. All vehicle fluids are removed from the vehicles before the vehicles are delivered, and there's no disassembly or dismantling of vehicles is permitted. Individual vehicle parts will not be sold from the site, only entire vehicles. We provided a letter from Sumter Township community official, the township supervisor, where IAA is currently operating an auto auction facility. The external effects of this operation are minimal. There shouldn't be much in the way of dust or fumes arising. Only noise generated will be from tow trucks delivering vehicles or loading or unloading equipment. The hours of operation should not cause any adverse impact. There are not many large tracts of undeveloped general manufacturing zone land in the township. As indicated in the Giffords report, most industrial zone land is either already developed or small in size. Uses such as this one proposed here often require large expanses of land zoned M1 or M2, which are not currently readily available in the township. If approved, this large assembly of land would be of sufficient size to accommodate the use. Heavy industrial use adds substantial tax base to the community, which helps keep the taxes lower. The assemblage of land has rail access to the east and is separated from less intense residential development by Bates Road. As previously indicated, there will be a large landscape berm along Bates Road frontage to screen the vehicle storage from the less intense use along Bates Road. The land in question is not currently serviced by public utilities, which won't be needed. The property has frontage on 2 roads, proposed right-of-way 120 feet on the master road plan. Only 25 mile will be used for this site access. Our client intends to contribute toward the paving of 25 mile, where the existing pavement ends west of the railroad tracks across 25 to Bates Road. This proposed rezoning is compatible with many of the surrounding uses which use a masonry yard across 26 mile, other manufacturing businesses such as a window repair, plastic fabrication, tooling, and manufacturing. There's another street, Bates, with a proposed right-of-way of 120 feet on the master plan that divides this from any residential development to the west. There's a land to the south of 25, which is zoned M1. Petitioner believes this rezoning is beneficial to accommodate this new industrial use for the community, providing much-needed tax base without adversely affecting adjacent properties. We're prepared to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you. Right now, I'll bring it back to the commission to see if there's any questions. Mr. Demink?
Mr. Scott, from your comments, so there's no dismantling, there's not going to be any crushing or anything like that? These cars are just there, it's a quiet operation? Is that my understanding?
That's correct. There's no dismantling. There's no individual parts. This isn't a junkyard.
Okay, so
There
the cars are
not-
just...
No stacking. The cars are delivered, sold online, and hopefully gone within a week or two.
Okay. So there'll be no adverse conditions for any area residents from noise or anything like that that you would associate with a used auto parts or junkyard, because this is not an auto parts or junkyard business?
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, if anything, it's like an airport parking lot. It has, it's a big parcel, has a substantial amount of usage, but no. The traffic would all come in and off at 25. It's not going to be on Bates Road. And the berm along Bates Road should prevent any negative value to people along that side.
The land where these vehicles are going to be parked, is this going to be gravel, stone, or paved, or what?
Should be millings.
Millings?
We're hoping, we understand that that's the next variance, but yes, the proposal is millings. And the reason for that is you've got loaders, you've got loaders there that have tracks and things like that. So the concrete solid pour isn't going to work well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thank you.
Could you talk to me about the berm? Describe what that's going to look like, how big, how wide?
There's a setback there. Marty, can you come help me with this one?
I'm told that it's a 100-foot.
No, no, come here, talk into this.
I believe it's a 100-foot setback. Is that correct, Jonathan?
Can you
Yeah, so
state your
the-
name for the record?
Ronald Martin Lewicki, 49877 Miller Court, Chesterfield, Michigan.
That's correct. The setback is 100 feet from residential.
Yeah, so technically I'll lose 9 acres of property from 25 Mile Road going north on those 3 parcels. And then the setback and whatever the specs are that they're gonna require me to have the height of the berm, and then the idea is pine trees.
So
Landscaping.
is
and
your
berm.
thought that people driving down the road, if they look over to the right, they're going to see a beautiful grass berm with trees? Or are they going to see vehicles parked like a airport parking lot?
The berm, they'll see the berm.
So they won't
There should
see it?
be, there shouldn't be any vehicles seen from the street at all, maybe 25 Mile Road where they're loading and unloading, nothing on Bates Road. Nothing on Bates.
Okay. Has there been a traffic study, or are you planning to do one?
There hasn't been, I mean, if needed be, I'll provide that.
Thank you.
Mr. Carr?
I don't really have any comments because I mean, overall, I think it's an appropriate fit for that area. I mean, it is remote and, you know, looking at the usages and the adjacents where there's a heavy industrial, you got the railroad tracks, you got the gate station for the gas utility company. As long as there's you know, obviously this is a site plan, you know, approval, it's just rezoning, that's why, you know, I won't get into the berms because that's something later, but I think from a use fittage, I don't have any issues with it.
Thank you. Mr. Jaworski?
I too don't have very many questions. I'm just looking at the rezoning. I think it's a good fit for the area.
Thank you. Mr. LaBelle?
I have no comments on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody that would like to speak from the citizens, you have 3 minutes. Please come up, state your name. We'll give you 4. Yeah, up to the microphone.
Why don't we move the microphone forward?
You want to just sit there? We'll move the microphone back to you.
Whatever is best. I can speak out loud too. They'll bring it over to you, sir. We'll grab it.
It's cordless. If you pass that down, it'd be great. There you go, sir. It's coming your way.
Seat's coming over to you. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay. My name is Walter Hines. I represent concerned citizens of Chesterfield. We are against any rezoning of this property because the last time it was rezoned from agricultural to M1, the parameters that were set forth were certainly not the same as what we have just heard, but it was supposed to be a composting farm. It turned out to be much less than that in reality after months and months. The Michaels Group was bringing in garbage and dumping it and putting it in on a 100-acre, what was called the Thole Farm, just south of 26 Mile Road. It took months and months, and finally we were able to get a hold of a investigative reporter from Channel 4 who came out. They videoed the actions there. We had pictures we presented to the then Township Board supervisor and the Township attorney. We were deceived, I feel, in what we were told. The only way we could stop this thing of garbage being buried on this 100 acres was to change the zoning from agricultural, which she was not doing any farming under the existing agricultural status. So then we ended up with a program where we had to stop them somehow, and we were told by both parties that the only way it could be halted because of the cost of going to court and getting injunctions, that it would have to be changed to M1, and there would be something in the M1 proposal that will then prohibit any more garbage burying or dumping. And we had all of the reports to prove that it was definitely garbage, not compost. Ultimately, it did go through and she was removed from the site, but the garbage is still under that 100 acres. It's about 3 or 4 feet down under there, and that's contaminated property now. I'm not saying that everything we heard tonight is being misrepresented, but any changes in this initial zoning from M1 to M2, I think opens the door to many other problems. The property right across from myself on Bates Road, which was 2 40-acre parcels, was sold last year. The parties came in, refurbished the house, and I did, as a concerned neighbor, ask what was going on. We were told at that point that it was being purchased by a group of individuals in Grosse Pointe who had several other auto farms in the area, and they were going to produce something similar to that here. I called the township. The township informed me that it was not zoned for anything like that. It was investigated, and I was told that the vehicles which are now parked there have license plates. I said, are they active license? And I couldn't get a definitive answer. So any zoning change at this point seems to me would open the door to any other number of possibilities that may incur over the next years. And we're looking at trying to maintain these properties in a normal, good state for the future vision. And I'll speak up quicker, and I'll be done in my 3 minutes. Well, I'm sorry. I have lived out here all my life, and there's a long heritage. Our neighbors are very interested in what's happening. So my thing would be to ask the board to turn down, at this point, any change in the existing zoning from M1 to M2 until we get more information or change it entirely, or the board actually appoint a group to investigate other possible property uses of that 100+ acres across the road from us on Bates. If no one knows, but if you go down, going west on 25, there are homes that sell for over $500,000. The same on Hagen. People are coming to this area because they like acreage and to build a beautiful home, and that's what we've maintained, and the other residents too. So that's my 3 minutes.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak?
My name is Wayne Nemeth. I live on Bates Road, just a few doors down from there. I'm wondering, the gentleman says the only things that will be coming out are tow trucks and equipment. What kind of equipment would you need if you're not going to dismantle cars? And then he said they wanted to have millings there because there'll be track equipment in there. Why do you need track equipment if you're just buying and selling cars at an auction? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Scott, we'll let you respond after they're all done, okay? That's what we're gonna do, Mr. Scott. We'll let you respond in your clients after.
My name is Andrew Smith. I live on 26 Mile Road, and I'm joining a property that touches Bates. Like the gentleman that was talking that lived here all his life, I've just moved into the area because it is peace and quiet and beautiful, and the land is to be respected, I believe. Bringing an automotive into that location, especially with the stream, the potential of runoff, land value on the residential agricultural side, it just bothers me really to see this change in zoning. And I would ask you all to reserve it as M1. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
You folks, why don't you just go all line up behind the podium, so when that person's done, you can just all come up and speak.
My name's Herb Sawchuk. I live on Bates Road. Spot zoning, which you're attempting to do here, tends to get communities into problems. Once you've spot zoned an area, someone comes in, buys land 1 or 2 locations over, and sometimes it ends up in legal ramifications. Okay, you've already moved this to M2. We want to now move ours to M2. You don't have as good a standing as denying that. And I don't think we really need to start spot zoning in the township. That's attempted a couple times before, and I know a couple times the community has turned it, or yous have turned it down in the past, and that. The other thing is pollution. You know, used vehicles, no matter what, the fluids are drained, brake fluid, antifreeze, transmission, gas, all those things, no matter how well you do or say you're going to do, and at this point it's only them saying what they're going to do and how well they'll take care of the site, we really don't know. There's a stream that flows through there. There's groundwater that many of us rely on for our wells. Maybe it should be put off at this time until future. Particularly sewer and water in that area would perhaps alleviate, and a paved lot where they would collect some of the fluids. If it's an open porous land, it's going to eventually get into the groundwater somewhere. And down the line, that's going to potentially cause another problem for the community, whether it's us taxpayers paying to fix it or attempting to get the owner of the property to fix it. It's a concern. You know, what they said sounds pretty good, really, as far as the noise level and that. But how do you hold them to that? And who has the time and will go out there and see that they're really doing what they're saying? You know, we can all stand up here and promise pie in the sky. Let's just leave the zoning as it is. It was rezoned once. It fits many needs. I'm not sure the revenue generated for this property with the proposal, how large it would be to the township, that it'll have a major impact. Do you have any idea what the revenue generated might be? That would be one of my questions. Thank you.
I'm James Foss. I live right down the road at Bates, right across the street from that. I would say I don't agree with the rezoning. We don't have much left as a buffer zone in Chesterfield. People move out here for the little bit of agricultural land we have left and still be close to amenities. Changing that just gets rid of all of it. Doesn't make Chesterfield what it needs to be. That's all I got.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Stutz. I live on Bates Road, next door to Wally Hines. And all I want this board to keep in mind is this. Many people, including myself, who bought many acres out on Bates Road, moved there because it was an opportunity to raise my children in a rural atmosphere not terribly far from the city, to give them room to run, so to speak. And we've done a good job maintaining the property. Mr. Scott, who I know professionally, I appreciate his presentation, talks about the increase in the tax base. Well, remember, the rest of us have lived there for 30-plus years, paying our taxes on time every year. Every time they've gone up, we've paid our taxes on time every year. And there's an old-growth, 10-acre old-growth woods off of Bates Road. There's a lake off of Bates Road, Bates and Hagen. And I'd like the board to consider the importance of keeping a rural atmosphere in at least some portion of Chesterfield. I don't care what they do with this auto place, if they're bringing in lots of cars and building a berm, it detracts from the rural view of this part of Chesterfield. If they find another place, this is not the only one. Thank you.
Carol Klonowski. I have property along Bates Road, right across the street, we're to the west. And I don't understand what the difference between M1 and M2 is, why they can't work with the M1. It probably has to do with the fluids. Could they not be removed before these vehicles are brought in to keep the contamination levels down? And should they get approval to move in there, what kind of assurances will we get for testing the water on a regular basis to make sure it isn't getting contaminated? I know that the board often doesn't get what the public wants, and that's understandable because you've got a tax base you need to think about for the rest of the community. But we need some assurances that the property around won't be affected in a bad way, our property values don't fall, and our quality of life doesn't decrease. Thank you.
My name's Ken Spurlock. I live on Bates Road. My concerns are deeply about the environment and making sure that it's able to be upheld and managed. With the water, we have our water from the well that comes from the groundwater, so making sure that remains clean. I have my family there, so the increased flow of traffic concerns me. The concern of the wrecked cars that are being brought in, and if parts are falling off of them, that's on Gratiot, that's on 25, and that leads to additional contaminants on the road even, not only in the ground. And if we're bringing in that much millings, we're going to have oil coming into the ground at different levels and contaminating the water. We have a lot of put upon this proposal, which again sounds interesting, but there's nothing holding them to this. If we give them the rezoning, they can come in and decide that they want a salvage yard. So it does sound, what they proposed sounds well, but there's nothing tying them to it. So if we then give them rezone it into M2, it opens the door into whatever they want. So I would withhold any support for it at this point in time until we can actually have firmed up confirmation of what's going to be done to ensure that we have quality of land, quality of water, being able to understand what parameters you're going to put in place. Thank you.
Thanks.
My name's Trevor Schaefer. I live on Bates Road. I'm that small notch on the lower left corner of that indicated parcel, and I've been there about 3 years. That's my first house. I saved a lot of money in my 20s to move out here for a lot of reasons. I think most people did. It's quiet, it's open. I enjoy the area, and I have concerns, with rezone it at all. I have concerns with where the berm's gonna go compared to my property, and I also have concerns with the groundwater, like other people had indicated. I live off of well water and septic, like I think most people around here do, and I ask that you would reconsider this. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Patricia Harson, and I have a lot on Bates. I have property on Bates, and I have a home on 26. It's in trust, so that means that I want my grown men to live here in the future. And with this coming in, I have, first of all, with what they're saying about the oil and everything, I used to work at Utica Trim. I seen what Utica Trim did to the environment. I've seen what happened on 25 Mile Road in Card. Same thing, red sludge. A lot of people forgot about that. My dad worked for the DPW and he retired. And he knew all of the old dumps. And there's always problems later on when you get something in like this with oil and gas. You don't know what they do on the property. I don't know if what other options there are for a group like this, but there is a complex. I don't know if Schmidt Brother Complex is still there off of 23 Mile Road, but can't they look at other options than taking what little land that we have for the future of our people, our kids growing up? I mean, you're gonna run into some problems just with the berms. I live on Low Plank in Lenox, and they put that gravel pit in there. They promised us the world. And you know what? That berm was supposed to have been maintained. I have wells too. And you're running into problems with people that have wells, septic fields. Not only are you doing that, the berms. Take a ride down 32 Mile Road when they promised us that they would maintain those berms. What they do is they rape the ground and then they cry bankrupt. Okay? So once you rezone this, can you rezone it back? I don't think so. I don't think that'll happen. And how long are they going to be there? What is their projection? So it's something that I really wish you would sincerely look at and listen to the people that voted you in, because they need you to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Teresa Wiegand. I am adjacent to this property along with Mr. Hines, who spoke first. I'm not for this rezoning. I have a horse farm on Hagan Road. We all, like everyone has said, we depend on our wells. Our, livestock depend on the ground. And rezoning it right now, it's not a good thing. Keep it zone 1. We're all in this area, like everyone has spoke. It's a beautiful area. We maintain it. And to rezone it, especially when you're agricultural, and have been agricultural for 40 years, I've lived there, and I don't think it's a good idea at this time.
Thank you.
Hi, Frank DeVos, live on Hagan Road next to Mr. Hines. That kind of speaks for everyone here. Lived in this township for 56 years, plan on staying in this beautiful township till they pull me, probably out in a bag. Love it. We swim in that lake, we drink the water, so we're hoping that you have our best interest in mind when you consider this. Thank you.
My name's Sandra Lindenbrink, and I live across from where they're proposing this. I agree with everything people are saying, but what's going to happen with the deer that we see, the coyotes that live in that field that we hear every night howling? When the train goes by, it sounds like a bunch of children out there talking because they're howling so loud, and that's what we enjoy. Are you guys going, what's happening with all the deer that are over there eating the apples out of the apple orchards? Because they're all going to disappear now, because that was an apple orchard that was left there for 60 years ago, and they go over and eat it. We look out in that, I look out in that field in the summertime, and a lot of times I see 40 deer standing out there, 30 deer standing out there. All this is going to be gone, and I've lived there my whole life, and I love the wildlife. But you put in something like this, I'm not going to see any wildlife, because it's all going to be gone with cars. Thank you.
Thank you.
How you doing? Jeff Schoniger. I live next to Wally, too. We all live next to Wally. M2.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Jeff Schoniger. Thought he did. M2. How much M2 in Chesterfield is not developed right now? How much do we have that's not being utilized? And why do we have to start another area that you guys want to create? Once M2 starts, it stays. It never changes. We all know that. And actually, I have a picture on my phone of 3 eagles that were on my property today. That's huge. And that's right across from that area. So, we want this wildlife to stay like we have it. So we would really appreciate for that not to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, Mr. Scott, you have.
Mr. Chairman, members, just a couple of brief responses in no particular order. This isn't a spot zoning. There's M2 zoning next to it. There is no parcels of this size that I don't believe there are any parcels of this size otherwise zoned M2. What this board and what some of these people I think have to consider is it's already zoned M1. Now, I don't have the zoning ordinance with me, but If you take a look at the permitted uses of M1, and I appreciate all the comments about nature and the animals and everything else, but it's already zoned M1. There are a number of uses in the M1 zoning classification that would be far worse than what we're talking about here. But be that as it may, some of the questions that were asked, the fluids are drained before they come there. They need a loader with tracks, long forks, pick up the car off the low boy or the tow truck, set it in its spot, take it back out, put it on the low boy. That's what the tracks are all about. That's what the equipment is that's there. There's no other equipment, grinding equipment or crushing equipment or anything else. And by the way, whoever suggested there's cars there now, there are not any cars being stored there by this company or these fellows who own the property. Other than that, I want to address just that. This is a proposed use that is not a spot zoning. It's a proposed use that will, I think, resolve a number of the concerns. And oh, by the way, you know, here, people say, well, how do I know this, or what am I going to do about that? I provided to the township today a letter from the township manager in Sumter Township, where one of these locations has operated for some time. Very briefly, to whom it may concern, on behalf of the Sumter Township Board of Trustees, I'd like to express our deep appreciation for business and community partners such as you and Insurance Auto Action. Nothing speaks with more authority than the integrity displayed by you and your staff. For over 18 years, your company has embraced and supported Sumter Township, its residents, its values, and a number of donations to charity programs benefiting our community. Sumter Township is proud to have you and Insurance Auto Auction as a viable part of our township. If I may be of any service, please don't hesitate to contact us. That's a letter from a township supervisor who's dealt with this company for 18 years. So if you're concerned about, are they going to do what they say they were going to do, or are they going to do what they have to do, you all have your township ordinance enforcement officers here. There's not a situation where things can go unchecked, where they didn't deal with the landscaping or things like that. So unless any of the board members have any other questions, that would conclude my presentation. I'm happy to.
Thank you. I'll bring it back to the board. Mr. Demink?
Mr. Scott, or maybe the people who are involved in this, and I recall when it was the composting thing, I was up on the board during that whole fiasco, and everybody was against it. We finally got, in fact, gentleman with the gray hair, I remember you being here for that. I remember Mr. Neiman because he's got the wood business down the street. Is there anything that your clients know about or that they have to worry about because the compost, and I don't know the site, I haven't been out there, it was years out there, because I remember we went out there with a helicopter flying over it. Is there any problem because of the composting that's under the ground, or is it covered with dirt? So I'm just asking you.
I'm troubled now because this is the first I've heard of a composting site out there, so I'm hoping it's not under my property or our property. I have no idea, but.
Okay, I remember it being out there, I don't
know where it's at, I don't know
exactly
where
it was
it
out
ties
there.
into our.
It was out there because I've been on this board 18 years, and I remember that whole fiasco. And because we wanted it shut down, and it was a real pain.
I can assure you we don't intend to continue.
No, I understand that. That's why I'm asking, is this, because if this compost is under this area, is that gonna cause a problem or anything like that? I'm sure there's probably gonna have to be some type of ground testing done before any purchase is done or anything like that. But that's one question I have.
I will check. I'm
Okay.
not equipped to answer the question right now.
Mr. Brokart?
I have one other thing, one other thing to the residents who spoke. At current zoning under M1 that's out there right now, you understand that factories can be built up there to 35 feet high, don't you? That's what can be built on that property right now. So I understand you care about the wildlife and everything else, but it's zoned M1. Factories could be built on that property to a height of 35 feet. And that's my planning director right here. Under M1, yes, and that can be factories, and that's light industrial. So factories could be built out there. Just, hold on, wait a minute, let me just finish. That's what M1 is. That's what it's currently is zoned at. So if somebody wanted to come in, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Palin, and build a factory 35 feet high out there, they could.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's depending on the use specifically. M1 is for light industrial, light manufacturing, where M2, that was one of the questions, the difference. M1 is light, M2 is general, so a little more intense uses than light industrial, but yes.
So just so you folks know, that's what it's currently zoned as. Possibly something could go there. You guys had your chance, Will. If you haven't spoken yet, Mr. Chairman, will you still allow someone to speak if they haven't spoken yet?
I can let one more person speak if they want, and that's it after that.
Hi, my name is Roland Leone, and I live on 26. The first gentleman who spoke tonight put it very eloquently, and the rest of the people, there's no sense me repeating what they said. My suggestion is Sumter Township is so happy with the first auto company, let them put another one right next to the first one. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. D'Amico, are you all done?
I'm done, sir.
Mr. Brokart?
I have nothing more, thank you.
Mr. Carr?
No, I don't have any additional.
Mr. Jaworski?
No questions from me.
Mr. LaBelle?
You know, I've been sitting here reviewing the differences between M1 and M2, and to exasperate what Mr. Demink was saying. When you get into special land uses in the M2, that's when they start getting into things such as auditoriums, stadiums, outdoor theaters, bulk storage of flammables and similar hazardous materials, junkyards, landfills, nurseries, greenhouses, PUD, planned unit developments, public utility buildings, racetracks, disposal incinerators, one-family dwellings. But if you go back to the M1, in an M1, you're allowed automobile heavy repair garages, nurseries and greenhouses. These are special land uses for M1. PUDs, again, planned unit developments, public utility buildings, residential dwelling and non-residential districts, various retail uses, and wireless communication towers. So what the M2 does is it just kind of stacks on top of what the M1 does. It allows for more uses. So in essence, that's really my only comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Nothing else? I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Miller, supported by Mr. LaBelle. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Our normal procedure is to wait till the next meeting. I will poll the commission to see if they want to vote tonight. Mr. Demink?
2 weeks.
Mr. Brokart?
2 weeks.
Mr. Carr?
2 weeks.
Mr. Jaworski?
2 weeks.
Mr. LaBelle?
2 weeks.
And I am 2 weeks. So with that, we'll make our next meeting to make our decision. Thank you. Meeting. We'll take a few minutes so everybody can make their way out. Could we try to make it a fast exit so we can continue with our meeting? We'll continue with rezoning them. Okay. Rezoning number 367, requesting to rezone the property located on the south side of 21 Mile, east of Continental Drive, from C3 General Commercial to M1 Light Manufacturing, parcel ID 150932126010. I make a motion to open the public hearing. Support. We have a motion by Mr. Miller, supported by Mr. Demink. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ms. Osborne?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have another rezoning in front of us, and you'll see on the first page of the letter, again, your task will be to make a recommendation to the Township Board whether or not to approve the rezoning request. The subject site is currently zoned C3 General Commercial, and the request is to rezone to M1 Light Manufacturing to put in a Bass Pro Shops boat service center and storage. The site is 3.5 acres. You can see on the map on the bottom of page 1, the subject site is surrounded by various zonings. To the north is residential, which is currently vacant. To the east is commercial, which is Sugar Bush Tavern. To the south is residential, which does currently have a house on it. And to the west is M1 Light Manufacturing, which is vacant. The master plan designates this area as light industrial, which does support the rezoning request to M1. The area directly east of the site is already developed as a restaurant and is C3 and is planned for community-wide commercial. The medium density single family residential is planned for the parcels directly south and those to the north. To the west, it's designated as light manufacturing, so this could be seen as an extension of that district eastward. In terms of public services, utilities, and natural features, the site already has water and sewer, and both 21 Mile Road and Continental are paved. There's no surface water on the site, but there is some hydric soils, which you can see in the map on page 3. The applicant didn't provide evidence that the properties couldn't be developed as a C3 lot, but are requesting the rezoning to M1 based on the proposed use that would require that zoning. The proposed zoning district is compatible with many of the surrounding uses. Again, we have quite a few vacant parcels surrounding there, but to the west, there's light manufacturing use, such as a tool manufacturer, a plumbing supply store, an industrial spray and powder coating equipment supplier, and an auto repair shop. To the south is residential, and north across 21 Mile is planned for residential but currently vacant. And then we have Sugar Bush Tavern to the east, which may be similar in terms of the traffic intensity. The fifth consideration is asking about traffic intensity on the thoroughfares. And as you all know, 21 Mile Road is already heavily traveled. It's classified as an arterial road in the master plan, and is currently classified as a minor arterial. So there could be an additional burden on the road, but likely it would be able to handle it. Consideration 6 asks about other land currently available for this use. There are other parcels of M1 throughout the township west of Gratiot Road. However, most of these parcels are already developed, and there aren't ones that are of this size that are available. The 7th consideration is if the site will be able to meet the dimensional requirements of the proposed zoning district, and we don't have a concept site plan for this site, but it appears that based on the size of the site that those dimensional standards could be met. The 8th consideration is whether or not rezoning is the best way to go about permitting this use, and a rezoning would be the best way instead of having this more intense use be added onto the C3 district. Consideration 9, there has been no changes in the subject property since the master plan was developed. And consideration 10 asks about unplanned spot zoning. So the 3 criteria for that indicate that the master plan is, or the request is consistent with the master plan's recommendations for this area. The request is also a logical extension of the M1 district that it surrounds it, and it would be up to the Planning Commission to consider whether or not this would grant a special benefit to the property owner or developer. Thank you.
Thank you. Is somebody here from Cabela's?
Bass Pro.
Oh, Bass Pro Shop, sorry.
Hi, my name is Ray Myers. I live down in Atlanta. I'm a land planner for Bass Pro Cabela's. So the site currently is, or the site that Bass Pro Tracker Marine own is, there's 4 parcels that they're trying to combine into one lot. This is one of those parcels. So they own all the way to Continental Drive. That's already zoned M1. The intent of the site is to build a 4-bay boat service center at Continental and 21 Mile. And the remainder of the site would be for boat storage, both the boats that they store for service and then inventory that they would be selling out of the store. The store is currently proposing an expansion of a boat showroom that is close to being permitted. So the reason for the rezone is to have all the whole site be the same zoning, and then also to allow for the outdoor storage, which I believe is not allowed under the C3 zoning. And with that, I'll open it up for questions. And
thank you. Mr. Demink?
You say you're going to eventually want to go for more lots going south of there? Is that what you're talking about?
no, sorry, so
You got the one lot there between, next to Sherbush Tavern, and then, I heard, did you say you're going for a couple?
they own all 4 of those parcels
Oh,
currently.
okay.
And they've submitted for that lot consolidation.
Oh, okay,
And
all
so
right.
they just don't want the split zoning.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, all right, I got it. Thanks. I'm good.
Mr. Brokart?
I'm okay. No questions.
Mr. Carr?
Again, I have no issue with this one, actually. I think it fits pretty well.
Mr. Jaworski?
I have no questions.
None? Mr. Klonowski?
Yeah, I don't think traffic will be impacted tremendously. We have a 5-lane highway there. I think the rezoning would be a logical extension of the existing zoning to the east, so I think it would be a good fit.
Thank you. Mr. LaBelle?
Just a couple of questions. You had mentioned, so this wouldn't be considered a retail area. It's more or less just a repair facility. You know, I'm narrating, I believe what I heard you say, and you'll be storing boats there that will be sold at the Bass Pro Shop along the freeway? Or somebody would come and purchase a boat at the Bass Pro shop and then come over to that facility and pick the boat up and head to the lake?
Yeah.
It's
so-
just a clarification of
Yes,
what's
so
going on there.
There is a boat service center, and the rest of it is for storage of boats that are being serviced. And then there would be inventory of new boats that are sold. And the customers, I think you basically have the option either to pick it up at the store or here. Now that functionality is my thought on how they would
Right.
do it, but they have not said, typically when they sell boats, you do pick them up at the store.
So when you say service, is it just anybody comes in and gets their boat serviced, or is it just exclusively for the Bass Pro, people who buy a boat from Bass Pro?
It is open to anyone who wants boat service. They do have certain motors that they service. So it's, I think it's the Mercury Mercruiser line and all of their family of brands. But yes, you can, if you have a boat that has a Mercury motor that's not a Bass Pro boat, then you can come and have it serviced.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. How many boats do you think will be stored there at one time? Do you have an idea?
I do not.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody from the audience like to speak? Please come up, state your name for the record. If not, I'll bring it back.
Mr. Richter, you're okay with it?
I'll bring it back to the board. If nobody else has any questions,
This is just for zoning right now,
yeah,
right?
we're not doing the site plan tonight.
So site
Just for
plan is
zoning.
later. Okay.
I'll bring it back to the board. If nobody has any other questions, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I do have one question.
Oh,
Just kind of curious. Where's the retail store? I didn't know we had a Bass Pro close to us.
It's a Cabela's.
Oh, it is Cabela's?
Yes.
That's what, okay, that's the only thing I can think of, but
Yes,
you guys,
so,
I didn't know you
I
owned
mean,
them now.
I'm trying to keep this project by itself per se, but yeah, Cabela's is, with the expansion, I think there's some signage adjustments that are being made that's gonna
Okay.
include having the Bass Pro brand as part of
Okay.
the store.
Now it makes sense.
So they're all owned by Bass Pro Tracker, so that's, Cabela's is just now another brand of theirs.
Got it. Thank you.
yeah, go ahead, Mr. LaBelle.
This is completely off target here. Are they still planning on putting the addition on the front of the building?
Yes.
At Cabela's?
Yes.
They are still planning on doing that?
Yes.
Thank you, that was.
We were hoping for that to be approved any day.
Okay, any other questions by the board? If not, I'm gonna make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Miller, supported by Mr. Demink. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Our normal procedure is to wait 2 weeks. I'll pull the board to see if they want to vote tonight. Mr. Jaworski?
Tonight.
Mr. Klinowski?
Tonight.
Mr. LaBelle?
I'd like to wait 2 weeks just for the purpose of creating a correct motion.
I would like to,
I'd like to wait 2 weeks.
I would like to wait 2 weeks. Mr. Carr?
I'm good either way, but I guess 2 weeks.
Mr. Brokart?
Tonight.
Mr. Mink?
I'd sort of like to go tonight, but if you want to, do you need to confer with council on how to?
Well, maybe we can just do that.
Mr. Siebert, can we come up with something regarding this tonight, or
I can do it, I just want to make sure that it's,
run it by council? That's why he's here.
That's, that isn't totally up to the commission. Certainly I think if you look at the planner's report, there's substantial provisions in the report which indicates that it's consistent with your master plan. There's no adverse impact on traffic. There's no adverse impact on infrastructure. It's compatible with surrounding land uses. I think if you just took those 4 issues right alone, that would be a sufficient basis. But again, it's the commission's.
Start writing, Mr. LaBelle.
Mr., you want to take a vote to see if everybody wants, so where we're going to vote tonight?
Yeah, we're going to vote.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. Give me a few moments here. I would like to make a motion to approve the zoning request to change number 367, rezone the property and located on the south side of 21 Mile Road east of Continental Drive from C3 General Commercial to M1 Light Manufacturing. The parcel ID is 15-09-32-126-010. As part of my motion, I'd like to highlight a few things. Number one, that the master plan has been designed as a plan. It's not site or lot specific. The area does have the M1 district already adjacent to the property, and as far as the master plan is concerned, I would say that it does coincide with it. What other impacts requested for public services? There's no problem with the public services. There is water and sewer, power, everything is there. The applicant has chosen this piece of property because it is close to his facility now, and it does make sense to rezone this piece of property. It doesn't cause any problems with the local thoroughfares. Is there other land currently available for their use? Yes, there is. But again, this is adjacent to an M1 district. It's just an extension of that district, and it is close to his facility. The development will be able to meet the zoning district requirements. With that, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Support. We have a motion by Mr. Lavelle, supported by Mr. Miller. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Final public hearing tonight is gasoline station, service station site plan number 2023-04, special land use C346 or 4.61 acres. Northwest corner of 23 Mile Road and SAS, parcel number 1509-15300-049. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Miller, supported by Mr. LaBelle. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ms. Osborne?
Thank you. So we have in front of us a site plan for a convenience store. Tonight, or at some point, the Planning Commission is tasked with reviewing these plans and making a determination if the special land use is allowable and if the site meets all the zoning ordinance standards and their intent as applicable. I will take you through my letter. I had a chance to look at updated plans and a response letter from the applicant that was dated April 6th. So I will walk you through the letter and I will note what's changed since then, what's been submitted. The list is significantly shorter. So on page 1, there were quite a few site plan revisions that needed to be made. What's left outstanding is something that the Planning Commission should discuss would be the building materials. And I'll get into more detail about that later. And then administratively, we'll need more details about the bollards and placements, but everything else has been submitted with their new plans based on my preliminary second review of their submission materials. In terms of Planning Commission discussion, pretty much everything is the same as in my initial letter. So the Planning Commission should discuss the proposed parking locations and if those are allowable. You may wish to discuss the berm design for screening to confirm consistency with the character of the proposed building. The parking space length may warrant a review and discuss whether it's sufficient given the zero curb and sidewalk abutting it. The placement of the EV chargers and the placement of the bicycle parking facilities. And then finally, the Planning Commission may wish to discuss the number and location of driveways, tapers, and bypass lanes. So I know that was a lot. I'm going to go through each of those a little bit more in detail throughout the letter. So again, just kind of an overview, the proposed building is approximately 4,000 square feet, just short of that, a convenience store and service station. The site will have 8 fuel pumps or 16 fuel positions, and that will be covered by a canopy. The parcel is currently vacant and Zone C3, making this a special land use for the area. The site meets all the dimensional standards now. I know in my initial review there were a couple of things that were outstanding. Those have been corrected on my end. They were corrected originally. Moving into page 4, the use standards. Here we can see that originally the gas pump setback A4 was not compliant. I've corrected that to now be compliant. In terms of site standards, the building materials calculations have been provided on the newest set of drawings, but they are not compliant. The applicant will need to revise those, but may wish to speak with you about that tonight. Let's see, this is page 6 of my review, discusses the berms. The applicant confirmed that the slope will be 4:1 and pine straw mulch will be used on the side slopes. The Planning Commission may wish to discuss if that's consistent with the proposed character of the building. All other landscaping items have been met, including a clear vision triangle on the plans and having the correct number of parking lot trees. In terms of lighting is all set as well. Everything's been updated in terms of photometrics to show compliance. Regarding parking, I'll note that the parking, and I'm on page 8, so parking, we ended up using the ratio of 1 space per 100 square foot of retail floor area, which required them to provide 18 parking spaces just for the floor area. They confirmed that they'll have no more than 4 employees working, so they needed a total of 22 spaces. They've provided 25, one of which is ADA compliant. So their parking is now compliant, and again, the landscaping was updated in accordance with the new required parking. Regarding the parking space size, the current spaces that are proposed are 19 feet long. Your ordinance requires a minimum space length of 20 feet. They've provided a 0 curb with bollards, no landscaping, and so the Planning Commission may wish to discuss if 19 feet is actually sufficient given the lack of curb and landscaping. And just to note, the parking space dimensions are not provided in the fueling area. We can confirm that those work administratively. It looks like they will, but it may be something that maybe need to be adjusted based on where you land with the 19-foot length. The EV charging stations were previously on the west side of the building. The applicant in their revised plans moved them over to the eastern parking area, making them a little bit more visible, but the Planning Commission may wish to discuss this placement as well. On page 9, item 15, it's actually towards the top of page 9, the Planning Commission may wish to discuss ingress and egress out of the site from both 23 Mile Road and Sass Road, specifically in terms of the number and location of driveways, tapers, and bypass lanes, as well as making any notes from the traffic study and the Road Commission's report. Bollards are, we did receive some information about the bollards that are proposed. They will be 3-foot tall black bollards in front of the entrance, and the one in front of the ADA parking space will have the ADA sign attached. The bollard placement was not noted on the plans, or at least I didn't see it, again, in my kind of quick cursory review of these. So we'll just want to confirm, or have the applicant confirm that they're placed at least 2 feet from the face of the curb and 3.5 feet from the wall. Bicycle parking was also moved. It was originally over on the northwest side of the building, and it's now been moved over to the east side of the site, kind of in the parking island that sticks out along Sass Road. They're providing a 3-foot tall rack with a wave design, which is essentially 2 inverted U's. The inverted U's is what's required from your ordinance. The Planning Commission may wish to discuss the location of this and if it's worth splitting the bike rack so that it's on both sides of the site. And almost finally, page 11 of the review talks about internal circulation waste management. I will note the applicant has added internal sidewalks, both from 23 Mile Road and Sass Road, that connect the bicycle parking and the sidewalks to the main entrance. And again, there's some information needed about bollards for the dumpster, just confirming the height and the materials for that. Happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there the applicant here would like to speak?
Mr. Chairperson and Commissioners, my name is Dave Lemons. I represent Come and Go Convenience Stores. Before we jump into some of the site plan things, I would like to introduce who Come and Go is as an organization so that you know who's operating a store in your community prior to having conversation about the specifics of this site. And so, I'll make this brief, I promise. We started in 1959 in central Iowa. We're based there. We're owned and operated by the Kraus family. Important part about that is that we operate all of our stores. We don't franchise anything out. Everything is operated by us as a corporation. We're about 400 stores currently. We're 13 states. If you think about Minnesota through Iowa down to Arkansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, down through Nebraska into Oklahoma, Colorado, Wyoming. We're also in Montana, moving into Salt Lake City, as well as Idaho, but most importantly, we're moving into Michigan. We've been working in the western side of the state for the last couple years, and we have a number of sites that have opened there and are in progress or in process of approval over the course of the next couple years. So this would be, if we make this site work, this would be our very first site in the Detroit MSA. I've been on the ground here for about 6-7 months working on that in this community. A few things that differentiate us a little bit from what you might see in a typical convenience store operation. For starters, we hire about 70% of our associates as full-time associates. They're guaranteed 40 hours. They have benefits, 401k, medical, health, dental, vision. They have tuition reimbursement. And so we're actually able to hire a much higher quality person, and we bring strong jobs to the community. We're a top quartile payer. And so that differentiates us a little bit from the typical retail situation that you'll see, which is usually a manager and a lot of part-time people. We also give back 10% of our profits on an annual basis philanthropically to the communities in which we serve. An easy example of that would be our partnership with Habitat for Humanity. We do a full build for them every year. Right now, this is actually our month of fundraising for them, and we'll easily generate over $500,000 that we give back to Habitat on an annual basis. So but we also partner with local philanthropic organizations in each of the communities in which we operate as well, not just in a national situation. So planners like this, right? So we have 25% of our stores that are actually LEED certified. We were the first convenience store operator to actually seek this certification. So we have 109 stores in our operation that have been certified. We don't actually seek the certification in today's world. It's an expensive plaque, so we do build to the standards, but don't seek that plaque. We have been, for a long time, a leader in alternative fuels. We're one of the first convenience store operators to use E85, to use E15, which is not new to the Michigan market, but it is something that we hang our hat on in terms of providing alternative fuels. And EV charging has been brought up and discussed. We do run conduit for every one of our sites that we build new, so that we have the ability to address the EV charging market when that comes around and when it becomes something that's prevalent. That is also site-specific in relationship to how it fits into, a particular charging network, if you will. Tesla as an example. But as we move into the actual site, one of the things we do that would separate us a little bit from our competitors, I think, is we provide a very high level of food. We have a full kitchen in our store. It's about 1,000 square feet. We do made-to-order bowls, made-to-order sandwiches. It's not what you would consider a typical convenience store operation in relationship to food. And because we do that, that also creates food that doesn't get sold. And so we partner with local food agencies to give away those meals at the end of what we consider their lifespan within the store, but they're still very consumable products. And we give away 1.5 million meals a year approximately, so something that we give back to the community from that perspective. That also diverts an enormous amount of food from landfills, because that food would typically just get put in a dumpster and then go to a landfill. This will run through a couple of just kind of internal shots of what our stores are. They're very open, they're very airy. You'll see a lot of windows on our site plan, or on our building plan. Those are windows that are not covered up by beer signs and cigarette signs and lottery signs and all that stuff. What you see is what you get, and it brings in natural light to the store, but it also creates a safe environment for associates that work inside who can see what's going on outside, and for police, if they cruise the area, they can understand what's going on inside that building and see right into it. So these are, I'll let you just kind of thumb through these just to give an example of what our stores would look like on the inside, a little bit of an example of food there. And I'm going to probably turn it over to the really smart people, the engineers, to talk more about the site plan and the building plans. But thank you for the opportunity. And I always get Jamie's name wrong, so I wrote it down phonetically here. It's Jamie Antonevich. So he's with Atwell.
So Jamie Antonevich with Atwell, civil engineer for this project. Before this, there flashed some renderings. There's some additional slides that will further discuss building material, but kind of gives you an idea, a rendering of what we'll be seeing here. It'll be discussed on further. What you're seeing here is a Nichiha product, which is a cement fiber board, styled in various decorative patterns. There's a cedar look, some white paneling, and then some aluminum and metallic accents to the building. So we're looking at a site at 23 in Sass Road, 23 Mile being a major commuter road, and anyone familiar with Chesterfield in the area, which makes the proposed use consistent with what would be expected. As Stephanie was noting, we did make some adjustments based on initial commentary, adding sidewalk connections, so you have access to 23 Mile and Sass. Parking, evaluated the comments and then made sure the presentation was adjusted to match the zoning definition, and so it meets that. As noted, bike rack moved for easy accessibility to Sass, and we can discuss further about the comment on splitting that. And then driveway locations ultimately will be approved by the appropriate agencies, and we'll get into that discussion more as needed. The berm was brought up. In general, it's matching township requirements, also following the character of the development to the north. We have reviewed those plans, have been in discussion with them, so a berm of the appropriate height with landscaping is what we are presenting here. Here's just a general floor plan, kind of mirrors the photos we provided. Some seating areas, some convenience area, sales as noted, then the kitchen area. So to touch on what I just mentioned, the proposed building materials are a durable, decorative manner. I know a brick is a typical request, but these we believe will also meet the intent and the standards being requested. And then, because it was brought up as part of the review from various agencies, we have some slides about traffic impact, and we have Julie, our traffic consultant from Fleiss and Vanderbrink, to comment on some of that.
Thanks, Jamie. Julie Kroll, Fleiss and Vandenbrink. We did the crash analysis and the traffic impact study that was in your packets. So I know this is really hard to read. I can barely read it. But we did the traffic impact study in accordance with MDOT criteria. It is on an MDOT facility. some of the key findings from the study were that the 23 Mile and Sass Road intersection currently operates at existing level of service B during the AM and PM peak hours. B is actually a really good level of service. For us, we look at anything D or better is considered acceptable. So when we look at E's or F's, that's when we're looking at mitigating. So existing operations were B during the AM and PM. When we add the site-generated traffic, we add some additional delay, but we're really adding less than 5 seconds of delay at that intersection due to the increased traffic volumes. And I'll talk a little bit about traffic volumes here in a second, but, and then the site driveways, we looked at the site locations. The site is not a very big site, so the driveways were placed as far away from that intersection as they could possibly get with the site constraints. So one of the issues that we looked at was whether the queues from that intersection would impact the site drives, and they do not. They do not extend past any of those site drives, so we felt comfortable with the plan presented. The access management, so that's just talking about what I just mentioned about the site driveway locations placed far from the intersection. The north driveway will not be impacted by the intersection, and there wasn't adequate frontage on 23 Mile to meet the MDOT criteria. They literally didn't have enough property frontage to meet the MDOT criteria for driveway spacing. So MDOT will consider that as part of their review. Ultimately, the recommendation for this site was to provide a right turn lane at the site driveway on 23 Mile. That's in accordance with MDOT requirements. There's already an existing center left turn lane, and it didn't meet any of the threshold criteria for turn lanes on Sass Road, primarily because the volumes are too low on that road to require any sort of turning treatment. One thing I did want to mention about this particular site, with gas stations, a lot of the trips are actually not new trips to the network. They're actually trips of people that are already on the road, and they stop into the gas station either on their way home from work, to get some food, or to get gas, or to get both, or people on their way to work to do the same. So what we see with this type of user is that the pass-by trips, on average, are 75% of the trips generated by this site are people already passing by the road. So we're not adding new trips to the network. So only 25% of new trips are added because of the gas station, and those would be people that are from their house, go to this convenience store, pick up milk, gas, et cetera, and then head back home. So that is a much smaller percentage of traffic. So the new trips is far, far less when you have this type of user. One thing that was brought up was the crash data. So we did a separate crash analysis to do a bit of a deep dive into here to see what was happening. Over the past 5 years of data that was available was 7.4 crashes per year at the 23 Mile and Sass Road intersection. Highest percentage of crashes were rear end and head-on left turns. That is super, super typical at a signalized intersection. Rear end crashes usually occur when car either stops short or you're not paying attention. That's usually what we see nowadays is people on their devices end up rear-ending someone at a signalized intersection. Crashes with injury, there were no fatalities, no type A. Type A is incapacitating injury taken away in an ambulance. Type B is someone treated at the scene. Those, I believe, were pedestrian-related crashes. And then 14 type C crashes, which were bruises. And there was no driveway-related crashes in the crash patterns that we identified. So there were, we pulled all the crashes from the area, and there was nothing related to any of the driveways in this particular area. But what we did recommend from the crash analysis was, because we did see some red light running here, we did recommend reviewing the yellow and all red times, the all clearance times, to extend that to reduce the potential for red light running crashes occurring. And then consider adding leading pedestrian intervals to the intersection, because there were some pedestrian crashes. I'm not sure how familiar the commission is with leading pedestrian intervals, but they're a crash reduction mitigation factor that we can put in to signalize intersections to give a head start to pedestrians to enter the crosswalk before the light turns green. And that allows for increased visibility for turning vehicles to see pedestrians in the crosswalk. So we've implemented them in several communities, and MDOT is now implementing them across the state. Thank you.
Nobody else wants to speak? I'll bring it back to the board. Mr. Demink?
I'm good, very nice presentation. I like your presentation. It's like one of the best I've seen in my years up here, but very good, thank you.
Mr. Brokart?
No questions.
Mr. Carr?
Questions? So, well, I guess you can start with traffic. Well, first, parking. Yeah, I do not agree with the size of the parking spaces. I think they need to be at least 20 foot. I didn't, I didn't quite understand why they're going with the smallest footprint of parking spaces when there's still quite a bit of land that can be developed. So, I think the parking though does have to be adjusted because of the walkway, because you're using full pedestrian walkway around the building and you have bollards, which is a hard stop. I think they need to be 20-foot spaces. And I also would recommend that they're 10 feet wide, because aren't they 9 by 19?
They are.
Yeah, to me, they should be 10 by 20 on this lot. So that's one issue I have that I think needs to be looked at and addressed. The turning radiuses, so I see the study on the 67 and the 50. Starting with the 50, I didn't understand why you showed, so I guess tell me, one thing I'll need to know is, what are the different types of trucks? Like what are the 50s doing? And what are the 67s doing? And the reason why I ask is because you show a 50 truck path that goes through the lot and then makes a left on Sass, which I have no clue why anybody would make a left on Sass with a truck that goes nothing to residential. It's 100% residential to the north. So that truck would be taking a right, you know, to come back to 23. So I don't know why that's kind of not shown there, just to show what that radius looks like, and the fact that they might have to go into the oncoming traffic going northbound to be able to swing to that right-hand turn, because that's more realistic than making a left going into neighborhoods. So I thought that's a little odd.
That's the more likely path. So we have further evaluated that. That movement is not going to happen. We acknowledge that. We can, provide revised truck template as needed to show that. So yeah, it's going to either be a right on the Sass or circulate the site and exit back out into 23. Regarding your question on use, what we represent here, the 50 is usually the fuel delivery truck, or it could be smaller, other good products that are being delivered. The 67 is a larger, full-size semi, so that would be product delivery.
Yeah, that's why you show only
maximum size
going-
truck we would expect to service this property.
Yeah, so you anticipate most of those are going to be, whether they're coming east or westbound at 23, are going to use Sass to enter so that they go to the back of the building? That's why you're showing just that path?
Right, correct. Yeah, so we wouldn't want the 67 or delivery circulating through where customers are. So it's going to access the rear, regardless.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, so they'll always be going behind the building, because that was one of my concerns, was you're not showing a path through the site. But the 67, to me, I agree, should never be going in the front of the building.
Right, we wouldn't want that. Yep.
Correct. Okay, because that was my question on the 67. The other concern I have is, I did read the study, and I know one of the recommendations was a de-acceleration lane when you're trying to make that right-hand turn, because people, 23 is fast, and nobody goes the speed limit unless they're 100 years old. So, well, maybe Mr. Miller and Mr. Demink, but I don't. So, my concern is, I saw the recommendation for a de-acceleration lane, which I've done many of those, and to me, this would be a good fit for that, because of the speed and the traffic that does go westbound on 23. So I'm curious why the recommendation was to put a de-acceleration lane, but you're not proposing the de-acceleration lane.
So we're not opposing that recommendation. It will be added. Just the time between initial site plan, traffic report, it just didn't get added based on the timing. So we have no objection to the addition of the right turn lane as recommended.
Yeah, I mean, because I would propose it, because again, I'm doing a lot of these, and anytime you're on that type of a road, if you can get a de-acceleration lane, all you're just gonna help minimize potential issues. Especially with the volume of cars, I saw the study, you know, I know they're passerbys, but you're gonna get more traffic, you know, that's gonna be coming in there, and, so, I mean, that would be one of my things, is I think the de-acceleration lane should be considered, you know, if we're gonna approve the site, plan tonight. I thought the landscaping plan was very nice, you know, for a gas station, so I thought you did a nice job there, and I thought you did a good job also, buffering, because we already did approve those, I don't know, what'd you call them, apartments, condos? You know, on the nor- on the north side, yeah, you know, so I was appreciative that you did address that, because that's a residential, area, so I thought you did a nice job, doing that as well. I'm sure Mr. Well will be commenting on your materials for your finishes. I didn't have an issue myself overall, but I could be persuaded either way. But I did thought they were very aesthetically pleasing elevations, so I thought you did a nice job with those as well. So otherwise, that would be my biggest comment. Like I said, you addressed the, you know, the SAS thing, which I think is really important to understand. And then the bollards, I know you mentioned bollards, we have to, you know, you're correct, I didn't see a spacing layout, but they did have the detail where they got the black plastic sleeve. Yeah, so I thought that was, okay, yeah, so I didn't see an issue with those as all, either, so, so yeah, I think other than that, I think you did a nice job, so, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jaworski?
I think Brian covered it all. I think it's a great plan. It's fitting of that corner. I'm just curious why it wasn't kicked more to the west, the driveway on 23.
We do want to provide some flexibility should the remainder of the parcel want to be developed. That's not part of this plan or any current knowledge of that, but that's why the drive would be placed where it is for access to the current development, and then to be centrally located should there be further development on that remaining area.
But that is your parcel, correct?
Correct.
So further development from you in the future?
More likely to be sold and developed by another party.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Klinowski?
On your, I noticed one of the suggestions by the traffic people was that you allow only exit, on your exit on 23 Mile Road, only to the, allow a westerly turn, or right turn, and not have a left turn in that area. And the reason is that there'll be a lot of conflict there with the corner and that lane. Would that be something that you would consider, because there is a potential conflict in turnings there?
I mean, our preference is to maintain as full access as we can. I guess we're willing to listen and discuss what additional concerns might be on that. But, you know, our current request is full access on that area.
Okay, thank you.
We need full access.
As shown, so.
Because what he's talking about, and that was a good point, because that was one of my points I forgot. Turn your mic on. Full access, you do have full access. You have everybody be able to come in from two different avenues, both directions, east, west, north, south. I think what you're talking about is, because there is, to me, I do agree, there is a conflict with making the left-hand turn onto eastbound 23. That is going to be a challenging turn, you know, for most people, because you have to stack up making lefts onto SAS, and then you got people going 55, 60, 65, 70 miles an hour usually. You know, and then you got, you know, my mom trying to make a left out of there.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I think that's what you were talking about, was
Yes.
that left? And,
Correct.
And I, you know, I mean, I don't, to me, MDOT should really be driving that, you know, but I do think it's a very fair question, because it definitely, especially at rush hour times, that stacks up. Nobody will be able to make a left. So it does something that has to be considered.
Yeah, there's one on 26 Mile Road at the Meyer, and that seems to work quite well, where you only have a right turn instead of having both, left and right.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
The complex that we did there at 23 and Gratiot. where Olga's is at. We have only a right turn there.
Yeah.
Works really well.
Hello.
I think most people would
sorry.
end up going to SAS and making it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I lived there for like 13 years in that area. Very familiar, that was one of the traffic accidents. That was rear ended. So I'm very familiar with that corner, and I just, I think most people will not try to make that left. They'll end up going to SAS and taking that left at the light.
I would agree with that. During rush hour, peak time, right, folks will see that it's gonna be a challenge, but that's 30 minutes out of the day. The rest of the time, the left turn will be viable. There won't be that traffic rush. I guess that's what our point is, and that's why we undertook the whole traffic study to provide that to you guys. And further, we understand that we have to get a right-of-way permit from MDOT. We've initiated that with MDOT as far as the location of the drive and such. But if MDOT requires further changes, we'll have to abide by their requirements, and the same goes for SAS and the Road Commission. So we understand that.
Mr. Klanowski, you finished?
Yeah, all done, thank you.
Mr. LaBelle?
Here we go.
He's already on.
I have a few questions. Number one is building materials. Our township, our ordinance requires brick or better on the front of the building. You've proposed a cement board panel, some metal finish panels. What can we do? Can we get some brick on that building? Possibly brick on the columns in that hold up the canopy, as well as, I'd like to see some brick on this building. Is this your building standard? Have you run into this before in other cities or townships where brick is required, and what can you offer us?
Yeah, so this is a fairly typical standard for Come and Go, and they kind of pride themselves in having a high standard, tried to offer a very aesthetically pleasing building with durable materials. Understanding the ordinance, I think it says something to the effect that exterior surface needs to be face brick or similar durable material. So we are kind of putting forth the thought that this is certainly a similar durable material. It's a cement material. It is chosen for a reason for Come and Go, in that it's durable, it holds up, it's actually really good to this type of climate, even compared to brick. So, and I'm sure you've seen this on many retail buildings, because this is a product that is used a lot nowadays on retail buildings. But you can't tell the difference between that and brick, if that was a brick pattern. So, we would be open to the conversation of maybe introducing some more brick pattern type elements here. We can certainly talk with that or work with staff on that. But kind of the overall look of the building, we would certainly prefer to kind of stay on brand, and feel that it does meet the intent of the ordinance with the durable materials. And I have tried to get an actual materials board for you folks here tonight, but unfortunately I wasn't able to do that. I do have kind of a printout, and it doesn't do it justice because it's not the actual material, but it kind of shows the individual materials that are proposed on this building, and it's all either cement based material, or it's metal panel, which is another very popular building material in this day and age. Like you would see, what you see in the new car wash in front of Walmart on Hall Road there. That's mostly a metal panel building, which is very attractive in my opinion. But I can pass this around if you'd like to see it. I know it doesn't do justice to actual building materials, but I do have a little bit of extra information here if you care to see it. But to your point, we certainly would be open to talking about it, and we certainly work with staff to try to implement some elements of brick or brick look. But I don't think we'd want to go to like full brick look if we can avoid that.
And we have discussed this in the past. I mean, you know what, the first thing that comes into my mind when you say cement board is like a hardy board product. Very familiar with it. Is it all pre-colored, or is this something that'll be painted?
Pre-colored.
Pre-colored.
Pre-colored,
So there's no
precast.
painting going on in the building in any way? You're not painting any
No.
of this board, or?
No.
Okay, so all the metal finishes all pre?
Correct, yep, they're all pre-finished aluminum, yep.
Okay. I would like to see brick on the building. To the extent, I'd like to see some kind of a proposal, what you have to offer. It could be brick, it could be stone, it could be something else to accent the front of the building. Second thing is that I have is the EV chargers. I think you put them over in the northeast corner of the parking lot? Is that correct? If we can
Yeah,
go
that's
back
where,
to
that is where we moved them to be a little bit more prominent
Yeah.
on the site.
Is that where the gas tank, or the fuel tanks are on the ground? Will the fuel truck be there blocking those spots when he's filling up the fuel tanks?
No, the fuel truck will be south, directly adjacent to, I don't have a pointer, so I apologize, but directly adjacent to the curb line. The EV chargers are in those parking spaces that are north of
Yes.
there, so there should not be a conflict.
Okay. I don't have a problem with the berm. To Mr. Carr's point, the 10 by 20 parking spot is more desirable. Chargers.
We don't have an issue with the 10 by 20, that if that can be a condition, that would be acceptable to us.
Yeah. The bike rack, the single bike rack, I don't have a problem with just one. I mean, if somebody's gonna be exercising and riding their bike to the store, they can walk to the door from one side of the building to the other. So I don't have a problem with that. And I'd also like to point out that you're showing signs on your drawing, on your site plan drawing. There's no sign review this evening, so don't plan on putting signs up without sign permits and sign review.
Yep, thank you. Yep, no, we agree with that. It's more for informational purposes, and we understand that a different permit and review would have to take place for that.
That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I did look at the landscaping plan, and I think it's one of the better ones we've seen. You know, it's really nice, got a good assortment of trees and shrubs, and most people just add perennials in and don't care about the good stuff, but you guys did a good job.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions by the board? If not, I will make anybody in the audience like to speak? Oh, no.
Gary, we won't go home.
Gary Yanonelli, 52624 Laurel Oak Lane, Chesterfield. In one of the pictures that was shown, it showed gas at 99.9 cents per gallon. So my question is, when you open up, is you going to sell it at 99.9 cents? That's an old picture.
We'll take it under advisement.
Okay, that's a good answer. Then my other question is, since it's modern America and the government's pushing to have more electric cars, can you have the charging station at the same place where you have the gas pump? Or because of the electricity, that's too big of a hazard?
Well, the car has to charge for an extended period of time, which blocks up that particular space during that time frame. So it becomes a half an hour or longer charge. So they would typically be separated. I cannot scientifically or technically answer the question.
I can. No, you cannot.
You can't? Yeah.
I'm a master electrician, so I
Well, I know
understand all
you,
of
yeah.
that.
Well, because you're going to need more charging stations at these newer facilities. The other comment too was like with reference to the acceleration lane when you're going westbound. If you talk to the people at MDOT, try to start it closer to SAS so you don't have the problem up like by 23 and I-94 where that one gas station is, where they have a taper lane, and then all of a sudden it ends for like 10 feet, and then you go into the gas station and people have to like swing out and then back in. And then there's a couple of places along 23 where they do have a left turn light arrow, like where R.C. Schmidt's technical park is. So maybe that's something that should be explored, obviously with MDOT and the Road Commission, as to a left, in that left turn lane for like eastbound 23 Mile Road, that they have a light, an arrow to control that, and that might help them to get left turn lanes out of their facility to go east, because there's not too many places along 23 where there's a restriction that you can't turn left coming out of a commercial facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Support. We have a motion by Mr. Miller, supported by Mr. Demink? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Normal procedure is to wait till our next meeting to render a decision, but I'll poll the commission tonight. Mr. Jaworski?
I was gonna say, are we satisfied with,
We have to,
Typically, we ask them to go back and make some corrections and updates before we.
right, so we'll just table it for postpone.
Yeah, to me, we table it now.
No, we're not going to vote on it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If you're gonna request changes, I would, since the public hearing's closed, I'd give them the option for up to 2 meetings in case they don't, get a turnaround in time, but if they do, they would still be eligible for the next meeting.
And our next meeting's gonna be a busy meeting.
Yeah. So we'll up to 2 meetings. We'll make a motion up to 2 meetings, right? You have to make a motion.
Give an opportunity to them.
So just to, I guess to be clear, you'd be looking for the parking space sizes. We'll
Yeah.
show the decel lane on 23 Mile, which we agree to, that's fine. And the building materials, looking at some form of, maybe introducing some brick. I don't know that I heard really anything else too much to address. Is that accurate?
Pretty much.
During Stephanie, you want to go through and do Stephanie really quick, or what I had written down was the building materials, the bollards, the parking locations for the EV chargers, the berm, the spacing of the parking spots and the length of the parking spots, the location of the EV chargers, turning right only onto 23 Mile Road, the bike rack, and I had the sign review. That's all I had for questions. Was there anything else?
They do have a left coming out of there. Okay, so we need to make a motion? Or anything?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to postpone making a decision for up to 2 meetings. Can we do that legally, or does it have to be the next meeting? No. We can be up to 2 meetings. Gives the applicant an opportunity to make changes to the drawings. I personally don't feel that they're, administratively, that's not something that we can do. It's not fair to the office to have to do this all administratively, so
Right.
I'd like to make a motion for up to 2 meetings.
Motion by Mr. LaBelle, supported by Mr. Miller. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Our next meeting is, marijuana is on the agenda, so if you do it for that week, you might be here for,
5 hours.
Okay.
We'll take that under advisement.
And there's no free samples.
Okay. All right, thank you. We'll address the few items discussed and resubmit those to staff.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
reviews. Our Secretary Rick will do the ones we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item A is Chesterfield Commons LLC sign variance, requesting a variance on Chesterfield Township ordinance of Chapter 52 signs, Section 52.6, permanent signs to allow the current freestanding sign at 21 feet, exceeding the ordinance of the maximum of 12 feet, and 132 square feet, exceeding the ordinance of 125 square feet. The property is located at 35000 23 Mile Road. The representative for the development is here, and he'd like to make a statement. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Commission. My name is James Martone. I represent the property owner, Chesterfield Commons LLC. As Mr. LaBelle had just indicated, we were originally tonight seeking a review of an application for a variance where we were going to request that the Planning Commission allows the current sign that is at the property to just remain in existence, and then allow the property owner, when a new tenant comes in, just to update the placards. I had submitted the application. I think there was a misunderstanding between my office and the Planning Commission's office. It sounded like, in speaking with Mr. LaBelle, that it is possible to change the insert placards without changing any of the other dimensions of the exterior of the sign, without seeking a variance. And if that's true, we would just ask the council or the commissioners tonight that we can withdraw our application, because all we're seeking is no demolition to the sign, no changes to the sign, other than if you look at page 253 of 288 of the agenda packet tonight, that is the dimensions of the sign, and so those internal placards, we're just going to be swapping out, for example, if Subway leaves on that sign, would put in a new tenant.
Mr. Chairman, so the way that's handled is, the Planning Commission passed a new sign ordinance that gave until 2027 for non-conforming signs. So if a tenant panel is changed, that's fine. We have a signed affidavit that the property owner signs stating that they understand that they can put the new panel in, but they have to bring the sign into conformance by 2027. So that is an option. The application came through for a variance. I was under the understanding that the request was to either keep that sign in perpetuity or, I don't know, whether it be make some change outside of just tenant panels. But anytime they do any work inside the cabinet or something like that, we would require them to come into conformance. So if that's what the applicant chooses, they would just be the understanding that they have to sign that sign affidavit.
To address that, Mr. Palin, if I can't dictate on what's going to happen in 2027 for the client, but happy to address the undue burden. If what I don't want my client to do is sign an affidavit waiving his rights to seek a further variance. If in 2027 it comes to light that we would still like to keep the sign in its current location. In the application or the petition I sent to the commissioners, I did outline the 5 factors that Chesterfield Commons does meet currently that would show an undue hardship to change it into conformity. Again, that is based upon today's standards. I don't know what 2027 standards look like. So happy to withdraw the application and if it's possible, reserve that right to update the placards. But if that's something that needs to be addressed so that he's not signing an affidavit and then it comes out later that he's waived his rights, I just want to make sure that we're addressing that.
I mean, I'll leave that to Mr. Siebert, but I don't believe you're ever refusing your right to apply for an appeal. You're just stating that you understand at the time that 2027 will come, and there is no grandfathering with that ordinance. But I don't believe you'd lose your right to apply for a variance.
He would not lose his right to file an appeal in 2027. If he's got certain rights under the ordinance, he has a right at that point to come in and ask for a variance.
Just that I'm understanding, so he signs the affidavit acknowledging, I understand what the ordinance requires, but can set forth the 5 factors for a variance pursuant to 52-11?
Yeah, I think the idea is more 2027 rolls around and you get your letter, hey, your sign's in non-conformance, and you go, no one told me.
Yeah.
Well, you signed off on it back in 2023, so that's more the idea.
Okay, but as long as he's not waiving rights, then we're okay with that. I'm looking over here, Mr. Canvasser, the managing principal of Chesterfield Commons is here, so as long as...
Richard Canvasser, Chesterfield Commons LLC. I'm the managing member. I just want the township to know that the problem here is you have a great tenant in Kroger that's been here for 24 years, and they have a problem if you alter their parking lot because the parking lot only has so many spaces to conform to what Chesterfield would want also. They have always expressed to me as a landlord, make sure you keep those spaces because if we ever intend to expand our store again, we wouldn't have that opportunity. So be careful that you don't tamper with the parking as it is now. And we also have a lender on this project that has made it apparent to us that we would be in violation of our lending agreement if we lost any parking. So I just put that for the record.
That goes as one of the key components of our undue hardship or inability to put additional sign on the property. Right now, the sign standing at 21 feet, it is effective of identifying to motorists for a 700-foot lineal property what tenants are located in this property. The property is set back, or the building is set back about 400 feet from 23 Mile Road. There's vegetation in the front. And so motorists, when they're driving by, can't easily or readily identify what tenants are in the property, which is compounded by the fact that closer to 23 Mile Road, there are outlet buildings that also block the view. And so having a centralized located 21-foot sign has proven to be the most effective and the safest for motorists going by. As Mr. Canvassier was mentioning, when we first looked into this, I think Mr. Palin and I were discussing this back a couple years ago, and the ordinance before it was amended was brought to our attention, so we're trying to figure out how can we best accommodate this. And when we looked into it, we realized that you can't move the sign anywhere on the property without digging into the concrete, ripping up the concrete parking, which then would trigger our negative loan covenants as well as trigger restrictive covenants in lease agreements with tenants. And so the purpose of requesting the variance, it was our understanding at first, and I apologize for the miscommunication on my end, or misunderstanding on my end, that any changes to the sign would require a variance. And so that was what we were going to be putting forth today, along with a few other factors of why a variance we would be seeking, and a variance would be necessary under 5211, because to do any alternative sign would require two signs at smaller dimensions, which would create traffic hazards, would not meet the obligations or the purpose of this statute. So I think I could probably reserve those arguments in your time tonight, so that in 2027, if necessary, we can be readdressing those with the commission.
Okay, you're going to withdraw?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, you're all set, right? We don't have to make a motion on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Comments from the floor is permitted by the commission on non-agenda items. Non-agenda related communications. Receive and file all comments regarding agenda items. Committee reports, ordinance amendments, board liaison reports, reviews, and discussions from members of the commission, consultants, and township employees. Mr. Palin, you want to do the bylaws discussion?
Yeah, I haven't gotten any feedback other than the brief discussion previously about changing the agenda order back to the way it was previously. So if there's nothing else, I'll just draft that up and bring it back for a change.
Great. Comments from the commission, Mr. DeMink? Mr. Brokart?
I'm all set, thank you.
Mr. Carr?
No additional comments.
Okay. Did you say no, just a comment?
No additional
Oh,
comments.
okay.
Yeah, no, I'm good. It's bedtime.
Mr. Jaworski?
Just to let you know, I will not be here at the next meeting.
Oh, yeah.
That's wrong. You're gonna get doctored, you're getting your pay doctored.
I'm not going to be here either. Mr. Klinowski? Mr. LaBelle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking for volunteers for pre-planning.
I'll do it.
Brian?
Mr. Brian and
I see my reminder text.
Brian and Rich. Mr. Burkhardt.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I'll make a motion to adjourn at 9:10.
Support.
I have a motion by Mr. Miller, supported by Mr. Demink. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We get paid double tonight. We were here for